Okay, so good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, like CP, I don't speak Spanish. I wish I could. I will try to explain this as much as possible. So, yeah, today the idea is to talk about embryo self-organization, and you have, I think, already heard what is it. So now I would like to experience it. So I would start with an experiment. If you could just clap your hands 3 times. And again. And again. And again. So that's self-organization. So you somehow created order without having a leader. Maybe I said again, but even if I wouldn't, you would have eventually find the synchronization. And it's what is self-organization is a question that I'm actively trying to avoid, because I think philosophically it's very difficult to define what is self, what are the boundaries of a self, and what is organized enough. But I think there are some, let's say, characteristics of self-organizations that many scientists across disciplines kind of agree on, and these are very simple characteristics. Systems that are self-organizing are composed of many interacting units, and these units follow some local rules. The only thing they do is to locally interact with each other, and actually this is what you did before unconsciously. You kind of synchronize your clapping to their neighbors, and then this kind of propagated to the whole system. So these local rules, in principle, they should be sufficient to drive the emergence of these global patterns. And these are patterns that you see every day in nature, like the flocks of birds. There is not one leader bird that arises these patterns. And the traffic jams, there is not always, let's say, an accident to have these jams when you drive on the highway. It's these local interactions that causes, let's say, jamming and unjamming of cars. And of course, it's very important to embryo development, as you have here before, and I repeat this movie because it's one of the most legendary movies of embryonic development, if it will play. But the idea is that the embryo starts with this oocyte that contains, in principle, all the information, the totipotent oocyte that contains all the information to create a very complex organism. I'm sorry, the movie is not playing. But you've seen it. But the idea is that the information is there, is inherited through the cells and to their lineage and their descendants. And so we have this strong component of biology that comes in the oocyte. We have these maternal determinants that tell the cells what to do. But on the other hand, as any object, an embryo is a physical object, and it has to somehow follow these rules, these physical rules of organization. It will still feel when it's being pushed, when it's being squeezed from their neighbors. And then the idea, and what is a complexity that we're trying to understand, is how this inherited genetic information is actually acting together with these physical rules of self-organization to create the complex organs. Okay, the movie didn't play. So in the lab, what we are inspired to study this is to use frameworks from physics, statistical physics, and this is specifically phase transitions, because they kind of guide us what is the minimum interactions of a system needed to give complex structures. And the reason that is useful for us is because they give us a value. And this is something that you are, again, very familiar. Like with the phase transition of water, you can go, you have an ice cube, the water molecules are dense, and they kind of interact with their neighbors, but nothing will change under when you change the temperature, let's say from 1 until 100 degrees, from -1 or -100 degrees Celsius. But then there is this sweet spot, this critical point, the critical value at 0 degrees, that suddenly the interactions change and you have this emergence of the liquid form. And this is, and this gives us a quantity, a value. And the idea is that maybe tissues also act like that. And these complex structures that we see, the tissues bending and folding and etc., we may simplify how this happens by finding some critical points in very simple cell-cell interactions. So this is what we try to do. Again, this is a zebrafish embryo. Let's see if this will play. Okay, great. So here you see again this mass of cells that this starts to spread on top of a yolk cell. And actually what we have found is that this is for this movement to happen and morphogenesis to start, before you even form the first germ layers, you need this type of transition. And from a solid or frozen state to a liquid and more deformable state. We can do this in the lab, like we can do biophysical assays where we map the deformability of tissues. For instance, here you will see a micropipette aspiration that goes in the tissue, and we apply negative pressure and see how much the tissue deforms. Like before morphogenesis is deforming a little bit, but then if you apply the same pressure just when morphogenesis starts, you see that the tissue flows like a liquid into the pipette. And this is great, but then what is the cellular interaction behind causing these types of transitions? And long story short, one of the many, many interactions that people find is actually, it's very simple. It's a physical attachment to your neighbor, how many attachments you have to your neighbor, and there is a critical point in them. And if you are above this critical point, then the tissue is rigid, that you will see here with this red cluster, because you have enough connections so you cannot move with your neighbors. But if you are just below a critical point in the number of connections to the neighbors, then, the tissue can be very floppy. And the beauty of this is that we can now visualize these emergent properties, this emergent rigidity by these red clusters, that I don't have time to explain how they come. And for embryologists like me, this was very, very fascinating, because that means I gain information in time and space of how these self-organized patterns of rigidity emerge, they develop and evolve during embryogenesis. Now, having these quantities gives us also more ideas to actually design our biological research using this physics as a compass. Now, we know that there is a certain number of contacts per cell that they should have to have rigid or fluid tissues. So can we manipulate it? Can we design molecular tools that they act specifically on these parameters? And then, for instance, we can push systems artificially and engineer systems to fluidize or embryos to rigidify them back. And having these tools, it allows us to go more and answer the question I was saying before, how these physical interactions actually are coupled with the inherent biochemistry that comes in the embryo. And what we know about embryogenesis is that, as I said, there is a strong deterministic component. In the oocyte, there is a history, there is memory, there are instructions. And this is very nicely depicted in the Waddington's epigenetic landscape. But these instructions actually are dynamic. There's not a yes or no. And these dynamic instructions are kind of depicted in these valleys. So imagine that a ball is a cell and is traveling through this landscape, and depending on how deep is the valley, then it's more stabilized there, and this valley could represent a fate of the cell, if it will become, let's say, the heart, if it will become the skin, and etc. And these genetic interactions actually change the shape of this landscape and kind of guide the ball of cells to make their decisions. And what we would like to understand in the lab is actually, do physical properties of tissue can change the shape? Do the interactions between the cells, how much a cell stretches or deforms, can kind of shape these valleys and make them deeper or shallower and facilitate the timing or the robustness of the decisions that embryonic cells have to do through their life. This is just a movie. I hope it will play to show this example. you will see the first cell fate decision happening in the marginal cells, the peripheral ones. They will turn pink. And on top, you will see with these red networks, these physical interactions. Very good. And you will see that there is a very nice colocalization. No? Let me try again. Let's play the game. And hope that you will see that. You see some red cluster coming, but then, yeah. The pink is not as bright there, but basically the cells that are down, they change their fate, and at the same time, they become more and more packed. And we have found that actually there is a constant feedback between the biochemistry and the molecules that instruct these decisions and the physical interactions between the cells. Okay. And I will just start finishing with this very nice movie of growth, because growth is also important. And this is, let's say, a motivation to look things dynamically. Also, how it's not a constant cell-cell interaction, but how the dynamics of these interactions and how the cells divide and interact with their neighbors constantly can, at the same time, impact embryogenesis. So this combination of physics and biology is, of course, very important at developmental timescales and at the moment to make decisions, but also they are very important at evolutionary timescales, because we think, of course, evolution is something that there is pressures on the genetic material, but from where do these pressures come from? And then this is a very nice paper, if you want to read, it's called The Logic of Monsters. There is a reason why in evolution we haven't come up with these very nice creatures, and that's why we put them in movies. And basically, the idea is that biology can tune physics, shape interactions, patterns, but at the same time, these emergent physical properties could actually constrain what biology is able to do. And since we are in this art and science symposium, for me, when I think about embryogenesis, I think about this statue. It's the self-made man. And basically, the embryo, I think, is a sculptor and a sculpture at the same time. So it's the artist kind of being part of the artwork. It's kind of an inherent component that cannot be distinguished. Thank you. Yeah.